Hello, and welcome to our edition of the Partner Account Manager of the Future. I am honored. I am super excited about today, and I'm just thrilled to have three of my friends in the industry. So, my name is Teresa Carrigo. I'm the founder and CEO of Achieve Unite. And let's do a round of introductions for our fabulous panel today. So, Michelle, why don't you go first?
Hi, thanks, Teresa. Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Hodges. I am the SVP of Global Channels and Alliances at Ivanti, the underlying technology of the everywhere workplace.
Great. And one of the big brains of the partner ecosystem of the future. John Muscarella, one of my dear friends, fellow DCite. Welcome.
Thank you, Teresa, and thank you for having us on the call. I'm coming to you live from New Orleans, the Big Easy. I'm at one of our sales kickoffs down here, and Cox Business, Cox Communications, we're one of the largest privately held telecommunications companies in the country or in the world. We also have RapidScale, a managed service provider company, and Segra, another fiber provider in our portfolio. So looking forward to the conversation today.
Me too. And my friend Marc Monday with the green and the colorful background. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Marc, well, welcome to the future, because the future is now. I'm Marc Monday. I'm here from Sage, and I'm super excited to chat with y'all today.
Thank you. And I totally agree on the future is now. It is the partner manager of now. So let's talk about, we are going to discuss today, and I think we're going to have a very lively conversation about, we all know this, it is moving from a channel to an ecosystem. You know, you may have the right programs, you might have the right portfolio, but in many cases, the PAMs, the partner managers, and also the sellers, which we're going to take in the next session, we have to evolve the skill sets. And so today's topic is all about that. And so I'm going to start with the first question. Why do we need to change now? And John, why don't you kick us off?
Sure, I appreciate that, Teresa. If you look at the economic environment that we're dealing with right now, everybody sees the articles about layoffs, right sizing, getting your expenses associated with your revenue in the right proportions. Cisco just yesterday announced a major reduction in staff, not just channel, but across the board. So you really have to consider the economic situation now to make sure that your team can show the value they're bringing to the organization every day, and that value is realized, appreciated, and understood.
Great. Who else? What do you think, Michelle? And then Marc?
Well, there's a couple things, right? I mean, we are living in the future, as Marc said. Yeah, I can remember 10, 12 years ago when I used to work at VMware, and we released vCloud Data Center, and I was set on the task of going out and standing up all these cloud service provider relationships. And I had this light bulb moment where I was super terrified. I was like, I'm going to be out of a job here in a couple of years, right? If all of this is really, truly delivered by the cloud as a service, I'm going to be out of a job. The reality is the channel has proven to be incredibly nimble, focusing on the value of customers and shifting their businesses from this traditional box shifting logistics type of motion to solution integration, solution provision, services delivery, and so on. And it's, you know, if you talk, I'm at the Insight Partner Conference in Phoenix right now at their kickoff. And we've been talking with them for years, and they've been tracking their mix of licenses to services over the last 5, 6, 7 years.
Right.
And we've reached that tipping point where everyone's almost over 60%. They're doing it organically as well as by acquisitions of services companies. So the traditional partner manager who was dealing with that linear channel now has to be more and more focused on a cloud, SaaS, and solutions world.
Great, thank you. Marc.
I mean, honestly, the reality is the pace of change in all industries is at an all new speed. We're not used to this. The pace of change, the pace of transformation, and importantly, the expectation of customers. We live in an attention economy. If you're able to stay on this call for an hour and pay attention or 45 minutes, I'll be stunned. The reality is you're going to pick up your phone, you're going to look at something else, someone's going to ping you, you're going to have a Teams message, there's going to be a Zooms. The reality is it is very hard to keep up right now. We need the AI to help us. But right now, for that role, you're at the next because you're a product manager, a product marketing manager,
Mhm.
you're a marketing manager, you're a sales manager, an operations manager, you're a seller. You have all of these roles, and everyone is coming at you. And so this broader economic climate, the broader economic
Mhm.
expectations of the pace of change, they're all kind of converging in this profession around partner account management.
I'm going to jump on that. Oh, sorry, Teresa.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to jump on about the broader economic environment, right? Um, the cost of debt is high. Equity has the cash, but wants to be smart about it. So all these private equity companies are taking a look at their investments and saying, hey, how can we ensure return on our investment? And they talk about these things. I would urge anybody to look it up around the rule of 40, which is basically the sweet spot of efficiency. And Channel's this awesome way to deliver that. And so you've got all these PE folks sitting back at the table saying, channel, we need more channel. And the partner manager of the future is really going to have to, or the partner manager of now, it's really going to have to understand how that translates into their day-to-day role. How can they offer the efficiency, reach, and scale that those PE investors are looking for, driven by the macroeconomic environment?
And Michelle, you're both of you spot on, because what made us successful last year, the year before, won't necessarily be what's required over the next 2 or 3 years because of the changes and the changes in expectations. So it's an ever evolving skill set and experience that we need in this role.
Right. One of the things that I've observed, we've had the privilege of educating, now I think we're up to 8,000 partner managers and sellers. And thank you, Marc. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, John. And the thing that a little bit scares me is there are so many very experienced people, and they think they know because they've been doing it the same way a long time. And this thing is getting flipped upside down, right? And so this will versus skill, this growth mindset, this leaning into learning is it's so fundamental. And so I don't know, I that wasn't in our
I think John nailed it a minute ago. He said, what got us here
right.
isn't going to get us there.
Yep.
And I think that's the trick. Your experience is wonderful and helpful, but maybe when you started, you were a partner relationship manager. Maybe you were doing a channel sales manager. The thing that you used to do has changed dramatically. The way you used to work before the pandemic has changed dramatically. And so take that experience, but recognize, to your point, the lens changes and the aperture narrows, and while it expands and the speed increases.
The speed and change thing. Go ahead, Michelle.
And I would add to that, I was doing a final interview for a PAM the other day, and
Okay.
we're talking through it, and I was asking about vision setting. How do you get your vision across to your partner? And the gentleman, bless his heart, talked about kind of a physical roadshow. This person was based in Asia, a physical roadshow, and bringing out a whole bunch of SEs from the US, and making sure that we had a fancy lunch and a fancy dinner, which is fantastic, right? I would love to be able to do that.
Right.
But in a world with these macroeconomic challenges, right? This focus on return, this focus on net retention, post-COVID, understanding that your environment's just fundamentally different. You're operating in a different operating model, and thinking through what all those pressures might, how are you going to do that vision in a different world?
And the importance of building trust in this hybrid virtual world.
Yeah, how do you do that?
It's critical. So, okay, so we talk about why change now. I think we did a great job. Y'all did a great job of covering that. Now let's talk about what's different in this new sort of PAM of now role and what's the same. And let's get into some specifics about that. Who wants to start us off?
I'll start if you don't mind. I think the complexity of the role has dramatically changed. It used to be single product set, single solution mind. It's really now the portfolio. It's a broader portfolio. The PAM, channel account manager, isn't an expert at everything, but they're a great quarterback, conductor. They know when to bring the right people in and out, how to use their resources appropriately. They're a phenomenal connector, not just externally but internally, right? Knowing the right resources and people that they need to use and leverage to get something accomplished, as well as externally, knowing your distributor relationships, knowing your agents, not just the sellers of the agents or the VARs you work with, but the whole staff, the executives, the finance leads, the operation leads, and they're highly influential. They know how to get things done through others that um, they're not responsible for, that matrix, managing the matrix. So that's really the difference that I've seen over the many years I've been doing this. It's just really evolved to be a much more complex role than most people appreciate.
Great. What do you think of that, Marc? Thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm going to make a declarative statement, and I mean this in a very positive way. Your job is marketing. And if you don't think you're a marketer, then you're in trouble, because you need to market internally. What's the value of the channel? You need to market to the partner. What's the value of my brand? And importantly, you need to help that partner market to their customer. And too many times I've seen traditional legacy partner account management resources say, that's in the marketing department. Guess what, buddy? You're in the marketing department. We all have to do it. You're a marketing resource, you're a comms resource. And then the thing I would add also is the math matters. Too often we wave our hands and say there's this magic of partner management and you'll never get it because I've been doing it for 20 years. But if you show the math of how you get scale, to Michelle's point around the rule of 40, you can get there. So think about math, marketing, and communications.
Love those. That's great.
I would add to that you're also a subject matter expert, right? Around partnering. We talk about that shift from logistics to services. You've got to understand how that services component is going to add value to the customer. It's going to add value to the seller's opportunity and overall the customer, and be able to educate or market internally around that as well. Additionally, there's new routes to market every day. Let's just take marketplaces. Historically, you got a distributor that goes to a VAR. Now, if you look at a large enterprise sale today, it's a distributor to a VAR, but they want to use MAC credits from Microsoft Azure, and somebody's going to be doing services who's not going to be complemented. You've got to be able to educate and help coordinate that entire motion for the teams around you.
I work with a great leader internally here, and one of the things he's always taught me about was storytelling, is that you have to tell the story. So you have to bring people in to understand what are you accomplishing and why, and how does it impact the business. So to Marc's point about marketing, I consider it more on that storytelling side about, this is what we're doing, this is the impact we bring, here's the value creation that we have. If you're effective at it, the more effective at it you are, the better you'll be positioned internally to be able to show the company how things are being done through the channel.
I think that is a great point. And this ability to influence change at all of these different stakeholders, whether it's the partner executive, whether it's a seller, whether it's internal, that has become more important than ever. You have to be a business model expert and a financial expert. So, by the way, we are asking a lot of partner managers. We're asking more of partner managers than ever in the history of this role. So I don't know if any of you have any thoughts on that.
The way I often characterize it is air traffic controllers are one of the most highly pressurized jobs on the planet.
And partner managers.
Right.
But let me hear the metaphor out, and I'll try to do some storytelling. So John just said storytelling. So an air traffic controller, they need to know what equipment is rated for what runway. They need to know about the weather. They need to know about wind speed. They need to understand about the air shear. They need to understand where the mechanics are positioned. They need to understand where the ramp is located. So if you think about it, that air traffic control role is actually very analogous to what you do. You don't need to be an expert in any of those things except for marketing, but you do need to be able to be clear on what equipment needs to be where, when, and what the conditions are. That's, I think, the best metaphor for the function.
I love
that. And you have to be pleasant at the same time.
Oh, darn. I didn't know that was part.
Well, and as you all know, PQI and your trust building skills, we definitely know that regulating emotions is one of the trust building strengths, right? Our ability to read both ourselves and then helping others do that. So that's a trust building strength. All right. So now we've talked about why change now. We've talked about what changes. What are the things that they've always been doing that they have to keep doing? Anything that you say, sort of stop, start, continue?
I think there's 4 things that are just omnipresent in any
Okay.
good partner account manager. You have a shared business plan with your partner. No matter what your coverage model is, unless it's like 1 to 1,000, you want to have at least a piece of paper that says these are our shared goals. 2,
And
you need to
achieving
have,
our like 1-page business plans, as you know, Marc.
two, you need to have a scorecard that supports that. What are we measuring? What does that look like? And it can be impressions, it can be MQLs, it can be SQLs, it can be conversion, it can be whatever. What are we measuring? So business plan, scorecard, the weekly meeting. And I don't mean the escalation meeting. I mean the weekly meeting where you chunk through everything and you make sure you're connected. And then importantly, the last piece, which is the most critical from a communications up, down, and across, is that MBR, monthly business review, and that quarterly business review, particularly when you're bringing in your executives. I think those 4 things never change.
Love it.
When you talk about the scorecards and the metrics, though, me or Marc or John, the person in this role, should have a clear view on what that value driver is, what it is they're delivering back to the business. And just for success, just if you want to be great at your job and be recognized, is to be sure that that business plan and those metrics roll up really tightly, that you're super clear on how you're delivering on that value. Because if you decide to go out and build a partnership that has nothing to do with those value drivers, you'll be in trouble.
I love
Well,
it.
and Michelle, to your point, how this channel, this revenue stream contributes holistically to the total organization. What the contribution is, how it
Yep.
impacts the business, the margin that you generate, the free operating cash flow. You need to be able to talk that language, and that's more at our level, let's say, that we can able to demonstrate and show what we're bringing to the table. Because without that, I think quite often you find the channel team being looked at as overhead versus a contributor. But when you can demonstrate the value and the contribution, then it's a different discussion, because for the most part, we're a variable cost channel. If there's no production, there's no commission. If you have a direct sales organization, it's a fixed cost channel. You're paying for those resources. I'm not going to say expense. It's a resource. You're paying for those resources no matter what they deliver.
Yeah.
And that's a message that has to be communicated more effectively, I think, by many channel leaders.
Well, and one of the things I see channel leaders, and I think several of you have done this well, is tying the partner goals to the board level goals, to the corporate goals, and that intersection. And then the partner managers have to do the same thing, tying into yours and tying to, so that it's, an orchestra in harmony, right?
Yep.
I think that has become more important than ever. And then
maybe just to close on that conversation, because I think both Michelle and John were making a really good point. Sometimes the PAM or the partner account manager, they get stuck in the day-to-day, laddering up to what the company goals are, laddering up to what the profitability goals are. Sometimes we just need to take a giant step back and say, let me frame this. What do you understand about what I do? What do you understand about what we do? And then how do I map that to the overall goals? That is a big miss. And to John's point, from a storytelling perspective, if I sit down and talk to a CFO, I talk about the cost structure. Hey, this is a fairly good return on investment from a cost of sales perspective. If I'm talking to someone from marketing, I might say, well, this is a fairly good way to lower your cost of acquisition or your lifetime customer value. And you have to shift every time to knowing who your audience is and then laddering up to the things that they care about. I thought that was a really important point.
Love it. And one more thing on that, Marc, and then this ability, and it is a story, but it's this ability to create. You remember we used to talk about BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goals. Now we talk about North Stars, but it's this ability.
Yeah, that's back when I had hair. We used to say that.
So that you can create a joint vision that is bigger than just the goal. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that ability is a knack that I see more and more partner managers learning how
Oh
to
my
do.
gosh, I love a partner manager who brings me, a big bet that's way above their target and their goal, and it's going to be 3 years, and we're going to build the solution, and it's going to be. I love to see that. It's always something that sets someone apart.
Love, love, love. Yes.
What it really does emphasize too for the suppliers like ourselves on the call here is the importance of the role and the longevity of the channel person in the role,
That is a
because
good point.
that is a sales killer, from my perspective. When you have turnover in this role, the trust doesn't transition from the
Mm-mm.
VAR to the next CAM. It
No.
just doesn't. You may have the best products in the world and so forth and so
Mhm.
on, but there's a trust factor between that CAM and the VAR that you're working with that's very hard to transition to somebody new.
Yes.
It takes time, takes energy. So really making an environment where your channel team understands that we're investing in them, we're growing
Mhm.
their skill set, we're growing their career, and they can see the vision of this role longer term is important for their own individual success, but also for the team's success long term is to have that tenure. I
I
can correlate
Yeah.
tenure to performance every day of the week.
and growth mindset. I would say tenure,
And growth
performance,
mindset, yeah.
and
Yes,
this
and growth mindset.
growth
Yeah.
will mindset. Yeah. I
So I
love
want
it.
to ask a question to my peers and to Teresa. If you've got a really important, critical partner, and unfortunately you lose your partner manager, who's the first person you call for a referral to replace that person?
Ooh, that's a great question. You
I-
guys
I'll
start.
call the I'll call the advisor. I'll talk to the distributor and who they might know in the area that makes sense.
Mhm.
Yep.
I'll go into the industry to find the right person. I'll also look at our development, how we're developing people, say, well, who's next up on our
Yeah.
team that we're
Mhm.
looking to give a stretch assignment to or grow their skill set or is ready to take on a relationship like that. So
Love
those
that.
3 areas I go to. Mark,
I'm
I'm
gonna
not sure if you have a different
this.
perspective.
I'll give you the scientific answer, which everyone loves, which is it depends. If it's a highly technical partnership, then I'm going to focus on that. If it's highly predicated on a business model, then I'm going to go on that. If it's highly predicated on a specific segment, then I'm going to go with that. But I think what I would tend to do is include the partner, particularly if
Yep.
it's in a tight coverage
Mhm.
model, to understand what they need. What type of resource could I bring to you in terms of skill, will, attitude, and attributes that would help you do the things I'm asking you to do,
Mhm.
which are big, and
Mhm.
include them in the process to the extent that your HR systems allow that, but get their
Mhm.
insight in terms of what they're looking for.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I will always call the partner and say, who do you want to work with best to grow this business? Who's gonna be the best fit to get you going? So
I love it. And then, of course, since we're on LinkedIn, we should probably say I would, of course, go to LinkedIn and leverage LinkedIn.
of course.
Yeah. So, okay, so let's talk
I mean,
now.
honestly, can we live without LinkedIn? I don't know that I could.
I don't remember a time
It's my
giving me
personal CRM. I, it is
Yeah,
the thing. Yeah, that's how I know everybody. If I didn't have LinkedIn, I'd be in trouble.
That is so true. So, how can the Pam of now, the collaborate more? How can they continue to build their expertise and create value for everyone? What's important for this person, and what advice would you give them?
if you're thinking about development, we at Cox we don't talk about training. We talk about really learning and development, right?
Love
Teresa, you and I talked about that before. It's a whole different perspective.
that.
It's a
Mhm.
continuous process. And in this role, it's so
And you're very progressive in this area, John. Your organization is really advanced. So I do want to say that as people listen to your answers.
I always look at the company itself has done phenomenal work for everybody to grow their skill set. But at a personal level, I always look at it as I may not have my team members for life, but I want to make sure every team member that comes through has skills that they can use to continue their career journey onward. So that's always the philosophy I come at this with. The complexity though of the role, you really start breaking this down into, hey, they have to understand the products and solutions that we
Mhm.
offer. That's kind of table stakes. But then you get into the business acumen training that they need, right? The finance, the marketing,
Mhm.
the marketing skills that they need, those are really important in the discussion. And then the soft skills you have to train on too, whether it's influence, presentation skills. So it's a holistic approach to making sure that the team members are getting the skills they either need to sharpen or new, and have that as part of their learning and development program, not just for 1 year, but for multiple years to continue them on that journey.
That's great. What else? What do you think, Marc? Or Michelle?
The advice I would give someone is kind of threefold. One, slow down to speed up. It's counterintuitive in every dimension. But what most folks who grew up in this industry, particularly in a partner accountant management role or a relationship management role, they want to do this staccato. I'm solving problems, I'm fixing things, I'm doing things. Yes, but in order to be planful about that, you need to stop, slow down, write it down, and be clear. That dovetails into item 2, which is focus on results. It is easy to be a very busy 80-hour-a-week Pam. It is very easy to be an 80-hour-a-week, very busy Pam. What if you were a very results-oriented 60-hour-a-week Pam or 45-hour-a-week Pam? Really focus on results over activities. It's easy to get stuck on the treadmill of activities.
Absolutely.
And then the last one, which is, again, difficult for some of us from our vintage, my vintage in particular, don't go it alone. Build a big tent. You want to bring as many people into your business as possible. I know it increases the complexity. I know it requires you to explain more, but you need the whole organization together with you in that engagement. So slow down to speed up, focus on results, not activities, and build a big tent.
Yeah.
Love that.
I'm going to build on, both comments. First, we all hope that we land in an organization like Cox that's investing in skilling people and upselling them. But we don't always, right? I've got a teenager and I have to remind her that sometimes you're stuck with that teacher, you're stuck with that coach. You got to figure out a way to be successful. But I will remind everybody that you are ultimately responsible for your career. Kudos to all of you for showing up today, right? That shows that you're investing in yourself and in developing yourself, but really get clear on, hey, what's it going to take for me to be good in this job, and what development do I need? And then build yourself a plan to go out and go after that. And as you look at future roles as well, work backwards. What are the skill sets that I need to add into it? Advocate for yourself and reach out either into your company or into the market to be able to build those experiences going forward. And then to Marc's point, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you finish.
I was going to say, to Marc's point, his third one, build a bigger tent.
Love that.
Start to think of, whether you manage a territory or you manage one single partner, you're the CEO of that business. You need finance help, you need marketing help, you need services education, enablement, marketing education. Build yourself your board, your leadership team of how you're going to go after that. Build those relationships, tie your metrics and the value that your partner's delivering to what's going to help them be successful. Ideally, it's all laddering up. You're going to need a bigger tent for that leadership team that you'll build to help you be successful.
The only thing I was going to add is I think a lot of people, we go right to all of our weaknesses and all the things we're not good at. And, it is so important to harness your biggest strengths and keep developing them so that that becomes your superpower, and then if you've been through our programs, we talk about the 1% rule, which is one thing you take away and you spend 3 months or 6 months really working on one thing, because one thing has an exponential impact, because you don't have to be great at everything. But a lot of us, sometimes girls, think we have to do everything really, really, really well. And so anyway, that would just be my bit of advice in that domain.
I love Marc's point,
build
though, about...
sorry. I was going to say, and build friendships with people like Teresa who remind you what your superpowers are.
For sure. Yeah.
True statement. But Marc's point about the focus on results, not activity. I do want to go back to that, because I know that's a trap that a lot of PAMs get caught in. I've seen it every day, where I'm responding to emails, I'm being responsive, I'm getting them, I'm providing them, an IP address. It's like, that's not results, that's activity. And the sooner team members can identify the difference and focus on the results, the better off they're going to be, and driving more value personally in their role and success in their business. As Michelle said, it is not about being responsive in email. It's about finding the results and being results oriented in the territory or the agents you're
Mhm.
supporting or the module of business you're supporting. That's what you have to really be focused on. So I appreciate you bringing that up, Mark. It's a great point.
John, oh my gosh, Kira, remind me, we have a grid and it shows the quadrants and we all gravitate to this urgent stuff, right?
Mhm.
Which is oftentimes the lowest value. So remind me, we will get that grid and we will publish that grid into this group.
And
Yeah, the
just
low
to,
value stuff, right? The low value stuff is
That's
what
what
you
it
need
actually
to.
often is.
Yeah.
and here's the double click, because I would assume if you're Pam out there, again, God bless you, you're doing the Lord's work. It's a wonderful profession, and I've enjoyed it my whole career. I think it's the best job on the planet.
I do
But
too.
but if you are one of those, I'm the guy who responds to email, or the girl that responds to email nonstop, and now all of a sudden you're getting Teams messages and you're getting text and you're getting something and you're getting something, you're never going to scale. You're going to run out of hours in the day. You are. And part of that is also being willing to say, this is the SLA for this type of activity. This is the SLA for this type of activity. And here's something that I'm just not going to do. That is very, very difficult. So really, I have on my wall, my goals are as follows. And when I'm in a quandary and I'm getting buried in email, I look and say, which one of these things is going to solve my business goal? And find that North Star, as you were saying earlier, because if you don't, there's just too many inputs for you to keep up in that I'm going to respond to every single email within X amount of time.
It is.
Mark, it's so funny you say that. For over 20 years, whether I'm an SVP or when I was a program manager, I had that, FY objective statement. These are my strategic priorities for this year and how I'm metricing them. It's right next to my desk at home right now. Still
Yeah,
do
I
it.
have to do it. For me, it's the compass bearing, because otherwise,
Yeah.
if you go 1% off course and then 1% off course and then 1% off course and then 1% off course, all of a sudden you're completely off course. And I have to, each day I have to look up and say, what am I paid to do? Oh, my job is not email. Email's a tool. My job is to make those things happen. And you have to remind yourself constantly.
That's great. All right, let's do the last big question. How do you build a development plan? What are some of the best practices that you all have used in developing PAMs? Just advise us.
Awkward silence.
Well, no,
I happen to know someone who's pretty good at helping develop PAMs, and they're hosting this call, but I won't turn it into a commercial. But sure.
And let me qualify, do you mean as a group or as an individual?
I think we just did a good job on the individual. So let's do as a group, sort of speaking to, maybe it's the leaders of the PAMs, maybe it's the channel chiefs, the CROs. Let's talk about kind of collective development.
Yeah, so I'll start. Anybody who's worked with me knows how fond I am of rules of engagement and RACI, right? What are the responsibilities of the, particularly in a world where we're so much co-sell and overlay these days, where it's not very, I sell to the channel and you sell to salespeople in places where we have to collaborate. So getting really clear on go-to-market rules of engagement and segmentation, services rules of engagement and segmentation, and getting that baked into internal enablement plans. And then within that PAM group, spending that time around normally using surveys, so internal surveys of how we're delivering, of what is our gap to that goal, and then aligning with companies like yourself or with an internal enablement to build out that skill set. One of the things that we've got to work on right now is, focus business plans, right? Different than 20 different partners. How do you do that for 3 to 5 partners that are really going to drive NRR, really going to drive accelerated revenue growth? So
that's great.
And then to Mark's point, I guess it depends, right? I thought that was my ultimate answer.
The consultant's ultimate answer also. Yes, it depends.
I kind of like to look further down the road as well as what's coming up. What things do we have to be prepared for? What learnings or development work should we be focused on? Because again, from what we started with was what got you to where you are today isn't what necessarily will get you to the next stop along the way. And provide leadership, the individual contributors, some future vision of what's happening in the industry, right? So that they're prepared and they know how to have the discussion with their VARs and integrators on a regular basis about what's coming down the pike. that's got to be part of that discussion, whether it's a formal training or informal learning through various
Mhm.
activities. I really like being focused on future proofing and
Mhm.
understanding where the industry is going. Because as Michelle said earlier, you go back 10, 15 years, it's a totally different channel than,
Mhm.
than what we have today.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Mhm.
I think you said at the very beginning, Teresa, there's a skill versus will discussion. Some
Mhm.
of us are highly skilled in this profession, and some of us are highly ambitious in terms of their will and desire to grow. I think what I would say is three things. You notice I've tried to answer every question with threes. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's because it's
Human
easy for
brain
me to
remembers
remember.
everything three.
But the first thing is, I think you need to baseline where that PAM or that resource or that team is at, because
100%.
you don't want to over index to skill when the problem is will. And I don't mean will necessarily, but maybe pace of change. So, first
Mhm.
thing is baseline what you have, think about where the strengths and weaknesses reside. The second thing is set some standard, whatever that is, a certification, uh, uh,
Mhm.
um, uh, some sort of course. Again, Teresa, you've helped me immeasurably many, many times to do this. You're the best in the world at that.
Thank
And then
you.
two, the last one. So baseline, set some standard. And then the last one is, and this is probably the most important thing that a leader can do, which is model the path, show the behavior,
Mhm.
show what a good
Mhm.
QBR looks like. Show
Mhm.
what a good
Mm,
MBR looks like. Show what
Mhm.
your expectation is of good business plan. I think those are the three key elements: baseline, certs, or some standardization, and then model the path.
And I love because one of the things, you all know Fiona and how amazing, I'll use her as an example. Fiona, she does this amazing job with people. And then she tells me, you have to remind them that behavior doesn't change after one program. They have to keep developing
mm,
the muscles. And so I would just encourage you to think about community learning, continued skills development. Maybe it's using videos, maybe it's using other things, practice circles. John, you invented the practice circles, and Diana invented practice circles, and then individualized learning. And we're doing more of these coupling of these different things for different people so that each person has their own roadmap of what they need to get to, like you said, the baseline or up here, depending on what their goals are. So, and I think that's really important.
But if you go back to we're talking here about the PAM of the future, right? And what's necessary. Being in that role today, and I think everybody on this call has been in that role. You are, and Michelle, you said this already, which was you're responsible for your learning and development. You're responsible for that
Mm,
as an individual. So they should be using not just the internal resources, but the external trainings that are available, following the
mhm,
industry, following the journals and
mhm,
publications, really working on their own development because no one's going to be no one's going to be more focused on that person than themselves,
mhm,
right? And as much as we said, I talked about our great learning and development program, it is still individual led. They have to come to
mhm.
the table with that will to go do the training and participate.
That's
So
great.
my coaching to any person in this role is you've got to be a student in the industry. Go
Love
out
it.
there when you're at conferences, go to the conference, go learn about the technical
Mhm,
skills, follow the journals and publications, go to the LinkedIn Live learnings to see what's
mhm,
going on. It may not be 100% applicable, but it's one more feather,
mhm.
arrow in your quiver that will help you as you go through your career and your role that you're currently in.
What John just said to me is one of the most profound things you'll hear on this call. It is like your 401k. Think about the way you get your check. When you get your paycheck, you pull whatever percentage out and you put it in the bank account. Your
Mhm.
professional development should be the same thing. The beginning
Mm,
of your week, your month, your period, whatever, what 10% am I investing in me? Your
mhm,
job is your own professional development. And if you don't think about it that way, if you wait until your performance review or you wait till the meeting with your boss where they say you have all these deficiencies and you
mm,
spend an hour thinking about how I'm going to shore it up, you've missed the whole opportunity. So
mm.
think about your time, your own personal professional development, the same way you think about your 401k.
Love it.
I just want to add on to that. I was having coffee with a mentee, a mentor, the other day, and I said, in my profession, and she looked at me and she goes, "Oh, I never thought about partnering as a profession." And I think that's one of the biggest things that
I
has
love it
changed.
too. That's right.
But that is one of the biggest things that's changed,
So
right?
true.
You used to be a channel manager before you went to be a sales manager or marketing person.
Mhm.
This is a really specific skill set and talent that y'all bring to the table. It is your profession. And fortunately, there's all these great resources out there to help you develop in that profession. And by considering it as a profession, it's a really great way to take reins of your career and grow in it.
That's great. All right, we have some audience questions. So we're going to finish up on some really good audience questions. One of which is, how do you make sure the little things are getting done if you want us to focus on the big strategic goals? And I think what are some of your tips and tricks?
Yeah, for me, it starts with the business plan, right? If you do a business plan in isolation with your partner, you're the only one who's going to execute on that. If you do the business plan aligned with the other folks within that plan, whether it's marketing enablement, your SE, and that they take ownership and accountability for that execution from the get-go, and then to Marc's point, they're part of the weekly call, part of the MBR and the QBR. You built yourself that kind of leadership team that should be sending things out, and then make really good friends with the programs and the ops teams. Normally, there's somebody to do that job. We as partner people tend to want to do it ourselves and just get it done. Make good friends with them and bring them into that team.
Love it.
I'm guilty of this, and I'm trying to be better at it, which is managing my own schedule and putting time aside for the strategic things that I need to do versus the tactical things that have to get done, right? I think that goes to the core of the question. I would tell you that the easiest, the first thing you have to do is just manage your time better. Carve out, half a day. Half day is on strategic initiatives and maybe face-to-face meetings and QBRs and doing the bigger elements, and another portion of your day is set aside for some of those ticky-tack things that you have to execute on because they're not going to go away, right? As good as an organization can be, you're still going to get pulled in, but don't let the little ticky-tack items eat up your day. Carve your day out into blocks of time that you can set aside and do the work that you need to get done for your strategic goals and what you're focused on. And don't get wrapped up in the individual things that you set time aside for later in the day.
Love it.
Yeah, I
Marc?
can't agree more. I think time blocking is a wonderful way to do it. It's very easy to get wrapped up into the spider web of like, just let's go surf the top of my inbox. Time blocking is helpful, but also a fairly provocative statement. Make your manager do their job. And so if you feel like you've got too much on your plate and you're having a hard time prioritizing, tell your manager, I have these types of tasks that I think are related to this goal. I have these types of tasks that I think are related to this goal. I have these types of tasks which are keeping me really busy and I feel accountable for, but I don't know where they go. Make them help you do that prioritization.
Yeah, I love that.
And Marc, to your, I just had this conversation with one of our PAMs this week. We have resources, we have additional resources, and I think one of the killers for a PAM a lot of time is they feel the responsibility of doing it all themselves.
Yes, that's where I was going to go.
And if you're not effectively using your resources, whether it's an engineer, a program manager, support team members, things like that, you've got to go back and reflect on that. Because if you have the resources and you're not using them, it's the first place I go is, why aren't you using your X person to help you? Well, I don't want to give up this blah, 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 blah. Well, that's not going to help you. That's why you're in the role, the position you're in, is you're not using your resources effectively. And if we're not using the resources, you may not have them down the road.
Yeah. I remember Kelly Bryan, she was the top sales rep in all of Bay Networks. And she said, everybody is a resource for my partners to be successful. And that was her mantra. And then the other thing that just struck me as you were talking is, I remember sitting and leading a team and I thought I had to do all 200 of the actions. I was like, of course we have to do all 200 of the actions. Everything has to get done. Everything has to get assigned. And this wise, very senior executive, she said, you only probably need the top 5. And I was like, oh my God, what do you mean?
I say it all the time. You
Right?
cannot and will not do all the things. What are the
I
things you have to do?
know, right. And that was
Yeah.
hard for me. Okay, here's another one from Mitch. How do you accelerate partners who are decelerating and they're still really critical to the business? Or we think they're really critical to the business?
Oof.
I,
It sounds like my life right now. Um, Go ahead, Sean.
thank you for clarifying that, because I was like thinking initially, I'm like, well, every VAR solution advisor is on that, that journey. They may be peaking, they could be declining, but if it's somebody that's really still successful and they're not performing with you, it's a whole different conversation. It's one of, you kind of go back to say, hey, is it the portfolio of solutions that we're offering? Isn't it effective anymore for them? Is it the personal PAM relationship in that account? It's one of those you bring up during the monthly review, the QBR, on what's changed. What's changed and why are we where we are today? Because maybe another supplier came in with a better solution or a better relationship that you're not aware of.
Yeah.
I'll
I'm
give you
not,
sorry.
go ahead, Mark.
I'll give you a construct and do with it as you wish. Oftentimes, what you're telling me is there's a misalignment of goals and objectives. And so what I would say is put down on a piece of paper on the left-hand side, here's the box of things we want to do. Our goals, our objective, this is the partner. Our goals, our objectives, our ambitions, our numbers, etc. And then on the left-hand side of the piece of paper, on the right-hand side, on the other side of the piece of paper, put what your goals and objectives are. And then draw lines and say, how aligned are we? Based upon the way that was described, the partner's going at the course and speed that they so choose. You want them to go at a different course and speed. You won't change that. You have to decide, where are we aligned? Let's do more of that. Where are we misaligned? We'll go find somebody else to work with. And that's okay. That's an adult conversation to have with a partner. What happens too often is when you're asking a tiger to become a lion. If a tiger doesn't want to become a lion, it's not going to.
Right.
And as hard as you work, you'll never get there.
Yeah. So right. A lot of the reasons we run into this acronym a lot. What is it? ETDBW, easy to do business with. And you get a partner that just says, I'm tired of it. This is just too hard to do, or you have your EDI project hasn't been fast enough, whatever it is. I'm sure many of you run into that feedback from your partners. This is just a tip. The most successful partner managers I know go and find the executive that's responsible for that motion, and engage them in the QBRs as an executive sponsor for the entire relationship, somebody who can fix stuff. Those are always the most successful partners who've got a really passionate executive sponsor. It's good for the partner. It's generally good for the career of that executive, right? Because they're showing up in a way outside of their role. So use your executives as well as your support team and your manager, but think about executive sponsor as a way, particularly if it's something operational or engagement wise with your company.
Yeah, and the only other thing I would add is, when the partners are decelerating, there's some really hard conversations that have to happen, right? And you've got to be good at having those hard conversations. You've got to lean into curiosity. You've got to get really good at effective questions. Those, which we would historically call soft skills, are so important in these tough situations. And the worst thing you can do, having done it several times myself and made this mistake, is to avoid it or not have it. Lean into the hard conversations and really get to the bottom of it. Cool. All right. The last thing is, second to last thing. How do you motivate partners to participate in your go-to-market strategies if other vendors are getting all their attention? This is a great one because we're all in different phases. What are some of your best tips and tricks?
Value, 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 value. I've got 10 things to say. It's all revolved around value. First, of course, one of those skills that you got to have as a partner manager is understand how your partners make money. And then understand within that go-to-market offering how that partner is going to make money, and ideally how much more they're going to make working with you than someone else. So it might be that you have a huge install base and you can bring customers to the table. It might be the rebate attached to that. Who knows, right? There's a lot of different ways. But knowing the value and selling to that with a partner.
And value in the eye of that beholder, right?
Yes, their value, right?
Their lens. What do you think, John?
Well, I think Michelle's comment's spot on. You got to show the value to that organization that's trying to offer your solutions. I think the second set for me would be around finding those key relationships that you can leverage, right? Or number one, how do you get into those key relationships to continue them? Or finding a niche in the relationships you don't have. How do you find somebody who's a diamond in the rough, to use an old term, and start working with them and helping understanding their business and finding a way to wedge in with a simple product or simple solution that ultimately expands the more and more of the portfolio. We're going through that experiment right now on, hey, you're selling our connectivity services, but you're not selling our managed cloud services. How do we get them to translate that? Do they have the capabilities of doing it, right? Because sometimes you may find certain solution advisors just don't have that capacity to do different things. They may be a great cloud MSP, but they don't want to be in the connectivity space. So you have to know that your audience very well to understand how you position yourself with them.
Love it. Mark?
I think I don't have a ton to add. I would just say that value exchange, what we used to call gives and gets, that's the root of everything. And you can do it in a little T-chart. Here's what we give, here's what you get, here's what we give, here's what we get. And maybe they're right. Maybe the other vendor is a more profitable business for them. And if that's true, then you got to take that back to the machinery and say, hey, this is a challenge for us. But that value exchange, give, gets, and you can do it across the life cycle of the customer as well.
Yeah.
Maybe your margins on the front end aren't that great, but maybe over time they are. Or maybe your ease of doing business is easier, or maybe your product roadmap is better than the other one. That's why you got to kind of look at it across the whole life cycle and say, what's the value exchange? What's the deal? And then what are the gives gets? And take the feedback. If they're saying, yeah, I make more money with these guys and they're easier to work with, you got to take that somewhere because it may be true.
Well, and that's where you use your team, right? We said this before. Don't die on the hill by yourself. Bring everybody with you to help you with that situation. And there may not be a solution, but it gets more visibility to the challenges the individual's facing out in the market. The PAM is facing is having more people with you on that journey so they understand what you're facing out there when you're trying to influence these solution advisors to go sell our products and services.
Great.
There's no extra credit for doing it yourself.
No.
All right. Well, you all, this is our longest LinkedIn Live as well.
No.
So yeah,
I know who to blame.
So much to talk about. And I think everybody stayed on. So thank you so much for staying on.
Thank you.
Amazing. Great.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
So I'm going to ask you if you could have one word on your t-shirt, because we do this in a lot of our programs, as it relates to the PAM of the future, what's your one word on your t-shirt? And mine is trust and PQI, as you know.
That's 2 words.
That's 2. PQI.
You want me to go first? I talked a lot of big words and kind of boldness and do it yourself and bootstrap type talk, but deep down, Teresa knows this, my word would be connection. People work with people they want to work with and they like and trust. And part of your job is to engender and to invest in that connection. So connection.
Love it.
People who know me will be shocked by my response.
Oh dear.
Especially Sue. What I would ask you all to do is go get a t-shirt printed in mirror image. So it's the opposite. That says kindness. And then as a PAM, go look in the mirror and be kind to yourself. It is a hard job. I understand it. Be patient with yourself. So I would choose kindness.
Oh my God, Mark Monday.
How do I follow that? That's
exactly.
Really. Thanks a lot, Mark.
Personal development plan, John. No.
My word, and it's similar to yours, Michelle, was influence. They are ultimately the key influencer across so many elements in what we do, and that's something we talked about this when the prep call, Teresa, was around influence quotient, right? What's the influence quotient? That was a whole new book we're going to write. But influence has not externally, internally, with other suppliers, with distributors. I mean, that is key to this position.
So kindness, influence, connection, trust. all of which were not the hard skills of partner management, right?
Right.
All of those are these influence skills. So I think that's a perfect way to finish the session, is to focus on your influence and your soft skills and ask for help. Look, you have people in this industry who care so deeply about helping others. And so please, please, please don't hesitate to ask. And thank you so much for tuning in and staying with us throughout the whole session.
Yay.
Have a great day.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Bye,
Good to see
everybody.
everybody. Bye-bye.